Thank you. So I am from the Kaduk tribe, which is one of the tribes on the Klamath River. I'm during this early period in the mid and late 70s, I was a young fledgling, career-minded, career-minded person thinking that I was going to change the world within the system kind of situation, and working not in my homeland. And so a lot of things were going on at home. I remember Joy was, when I took a few classes at the local junior college, she said, "You've got to get involved." And so she said, "First thing, you're going to start the Native American Club at College of the Redwoods." So, but of course, you're young and you just say, "Oh, okay, no problem." And then but you don't really know what you're doing. I guess she led by example. She never knew what she was doing, and I don't either. So, so that's how we do it on the rivers up north. We just got to get in there and start paddling. So all this stuff was going on, and there was this, kind of turmoil, and there was, in a way, an awakening that was happening. There was a huge, monstrous timber industry that has, maybe had reached its peak and was on its decline, but it was still pretty big, even in the 70s. So there was a fishing industry. There was a lot of work after the Second World War in our area. And so I think that kind of derailed a lot of what you would call spiritual development or spiritual evolution within the community. And people were being sucked dry of their spirit in, being refilled with the idea of money and a money economy. And prior to that, people lived by working together, fishing together, hunting. Our world was a world based on mutuality, working together, and giving and receiving was the kind of law of the land. Indian law was very much a part of who we were, our families, the families that we came out of. And if any of you, I don't know, everybody raise your hand if you've ever used an outhouse. Yeah, oh geez, wow, gosh. Didn't realize there were so many hillbillies in the group. But, well, there's something to be said about that. How many have done a two-seater, have been in a two-seater? Yeah, a couple. So now that's mutuality, anybody can do that. But that was something that was really important, especially with women at night. They would go out together. And so there's just certain kind of just laws that, of existence and things that we live by that was just everyday things that everybody just kind of takes for granted. And I remember the story of the Tomales Bay, the last woman to live on the Tomales Bay, a Coast Miwok woman. And the oldest woman living there, and how the houses, the families that were living around, the BIA was going to come in and provide indoor plumbing for the first time. And everybody was just so happy. Oh my gosh, they're going to have showers and flushing toilets, and what a great thing. And the old lady was just repulsed by the idea that anybody would take a dump in their own home. That was so evil to even consider such a thing. Everybody wanted it, and just, okay, well, she doesn't need to have one, and everybody else wanted one. So that's how change happens. It just happens to you when it's coming from the outside. And I think that's kind of what the big lesson with the Go Road is that change was happening to us. It was a constant thing. It wasn't a mutual give and take. It was something that was just an inevitability about it. So After listening to everyone here so far today, it seems like the Go Road ends up being just the bedrock of so much. It's connected with the real basic understanding of who we are as Native peoples, all tribes, every tribe. We're sedentary people. And you talk to this next group over here, they're nomadic peoples. They traveled everywhere. They were more portable. They were able to do things in ways that we could not conceive of. You know, we live where our ancestors came from. That's who we are. We don't have some concepts that might exist where you can actually see the world as, you know, in some kind of miasmic way. This is very concrete, very real. It's right here in front of us. That's who we are. So listening to everyone, I realized that everything is combined in this case. From the idea of history, this idea of history is pretty interesting and kind of it's kind of controversial if you really look at it. It very shortly becomes kind of a controversy. It's our own personal histories. Even our personal stories are confrontational, or there's conflict. There's all of the stuff that's going on within our own stories, personal stories. The idea I was thinking of 9/11. You can think of how 9/11 just really impacted people. I mean, I was watching it on television. I quickly went to Humboldt State and watched. You know, everybody was just dumbfounded watching these buildings like in flame. And you know, when they started collapsing, you know, just the absolute horror in people's faces all around, people fainting and running out of the room screaming and yelling. Geez, what a trauma that resulted in human rights, our own Bill of Rights being thrown out the window. I mean, there's all of these incredible knee-jerk reactions. And so Native communities, you know, pretty routinely underwent those kinds of traumas. And so the one thing that maintained coherence of worldview and all of these things was this thing that we call, you know, on the one hand, religion, on the other hand, our way of life. This is what gave us the even keel to make it through that, which is systematically being taken from us by this onslaught of external change. So the idea, I think that, I guess what you should know is, like, when Dorothea was up there, there was a handful of people, maybe 3, maybe 4 people who actually physically went there to those places, maybe 2 per tribe possibly. And now I can tell you that, you know, there's at least 25, 35 people that make annual pilgrimages to that place, spend extended periods of time, you know, meditating and being a part of that place. So in some ways, this was history. And it has, you know, 25 years later, there's a generation like Brittany, and she's that age. You know, they don't know that that place was not an actively, you know, an active part of our community, like the other person in the room. The empty chairs are the high country that's with us. So as we gather, we are all gathering with all of the stuff that you were mentioning, this idea of high country being here with us at all times. So all the emptiness is the high country. So I think that's kind of like a good thing, to think that it's being used so much and by so many people who don't know that it hadn't been used for quite a while. the native language. I think this is the problem with America, is that it can't see that how many native languages that there are, and each one represents a worldview, a way of living that is unique to a landscape. It is wedded to that landscape wherever it is. So, you know, they don't realize how many languages there are, and that it represents more than just a linguistic, you know, quirkiness. California has 80% of all the languages in North America are here in California. So that's an awful lot of unique worldviews all in one place. Where we come from, we have 3 separate language families, complete, total separate language families. Yet, what we all have come to understand is that this high country was sacred for all of the same reasons in different languages, of seeing the world in a slightly different way, but recognizing the sanctity, the spiritual power of the place to imbue me, Julian Lang, or Lewis, or Chris, or whoever it is in this room. We all have that power to receive. But then, you know, then comes the idea of responsibility versus right. Not a right to receive it. It becomes a responsibility once we do receive it. So there's a lot of different things that were inspired by everyone speaking today. Human beings, I guess, where we come from, we come from a land where there are no chiefs. Nobody tells us what to do. We don't understand a system that involves chiefdom or that kind of leader. You know, I am a leader because I do what I say. That's the only reason. So if I say this, then I do it. Chris is a leader because he does what he says. And like Joy is a leader because she does what she says. The Yurok are a different kind of a group than the Kanak people. We're a little more laid back. They're a little more kind of like demanding, I guess you could say. And so the whole idea is that their law, I guess basic social law, is that you can boss anybody around that'll let you. So that's the way they believe it. And ours is that you could try to boss us around, you know, everything, and, you know, but we're not going to listen to you. You know, it's going to be based upon what you're doing, not on what you're saying. And so everything's the same, but kind of slightly different. When Chris came to me and said that we need to do this, work on this thing called the Go Road, it was like I was there, my cousin, 2 good friends, and Chris was sitting there, had us sitting down, and he's walking back and forth. You know, we got to do this. We got to, you know, and he's just real adamant that something has to happen. And then he left. I guess let us think about it. And so my cousin said, "Well, I'm not going to do anything." He had a different agenda that didn't include stop everything and do this. Everybody decided, no, we can't do that. My training up to that point had been that we are spiritual people with a job, responsibility. And I said, well, I have to do it. You know, I think I just have to do it. So that's why we kind of partnered up at that point. So first thing we need, well, we need money. Chris said, we need money. So well, how much do we need? He said, well, $5,000. Okay. So I went down to the local coffee shop, and there was a woman sitting there. And I said, got my coffee, and I said, you know, we're having this trouble. I need $5,000. And she listened, and she said, okay. So it just happened. And that was the beginning of this whole thing of like, this is a magical thing. I mean, it's pure magic. Life is, our lifestyle is a magic lifestyle. We have no control over it. We don't know what we're doing. We just do it. You know, and so that's kind of how it started, $5,000. You know, okay, there's a check for 5,000. Okay, now we got money in the bank. Okay, now we can do, okay, what are we going to do? Now we got to, the big problem was the community was all sitting here like you guys are, wondering what's going on. Why are we even here? I mean, we don't know what's going on. So, well, the Sacred High Country, and everybody's going, Sacred High Country? You know, what's that? So we had this whole process of like, there's a basics, there's a foundation for it all. So we began this idea of teaching our own community more and more and more. All it took was one conversation with a community of people who didn't know what the hell we were talking about, to where their elders would come and tell them, this is what it's about. So,
stay strong, brother. Stay strong.
the community became a community. The idea of saving a place was became like a reality that none of us knew. We were still talking about it. And wherever we went, there was always I guess you would say, more emotional understanding of everything. We understood at an emotional level what it is that this place represented, this high country. Every little town, there's like a lot of little places, we would go and begin this process of speaking to people, getting people to come. Sometimes food, often food. The group expanded this kind of organizing community effort. This group of people who were caravanning to the communities. And then we began this process of reaching out, coming down here with my now father-in-law, Dave Risling, you know, was always really open arms for us, and even demanding that we come down. And yet, at the same time, there was this other I guess it still wasn't a current discussion everywhere, because there were certain people, like for instance, when we went to DQ, I know that there were some people, some of the Hupa people actually there that were down there, were wondering, well, what is this thing? What are you talking about? The Go Road. They had no clue. They didn't know what it was. They said, well, this has been going on. Well, how long has this been going on? It's been about 4 or 5. Well, why don't we know about this? Why doesn't everybody not know about this? It became an incredibly important thing because it is important. And so the word began spreading, came down. There were certain people I wanted to kind of acknowledge, some of them, Chris, you know, my wife Lynn Risling, and Carol Lewis, now Carol Corbett then, was real important person. Charlie Tom, who recently passed, was an important person. He, unlike most of us, always knew what he was doing. It's just he didn't know how he was going to do it. So he would just get everybody riled up, and we got to do this all together, you know, or it ain't going to happen. And so he would make people agree to things, and but he was one voice, one elder, who I said was very adamant and very kind of crazy, and like, boy, when he walked in the room, everything was just hilarious and crazy. And so all of the very nice people sat there and said, we have to get involved. They wanted to show the ballots, like the whole array of this is the Native mind or the Native community. And so he led by, in his own example, he just went and demanded that other people get involved because he was going to do it whether they got involved or not. And they said, well, if he's going to do it, then we better get involved. So he had that kind of way of getting more and more people to the table. But all of the elders that we worked with, almost all of them are passed away now, at least from up the river. And they were important people because wherever we went, we were young people, and they validated us wherever we went. They never, ever said, you guys are crazy. You guys shouldn't be doing this. You don't know what you're talking about. They always came and they always validated. The most Christian of them all would say, my Christianity, they weren't explicitly saying this, but they were saying essentially that my Christianity is who I am today, but within me is this belief in this place, in these places, in this knowledge. That is the power of that's their human life, spirit power. So I think that the important thing in terms of the history is that there was so much need within our community, maybe, is what it was. There was so much emotional need within our community to have to clear ourselves. I think we call it purify ourselves. That our community needed a purification ceremony of some sort. And we didn't know what that was or how that could ever be a possibility because we were turning white. That was what the thing, we were becoming American so much. So now how can we purify ourselves? And we found out by just being responsible to the place. That's how you do it. So it was a great learning thing. The learning curve, if you want to get involved with this your own selves, it starts really to go up, and then it never goes up. But there's a strong push to go up, and you just go straight ahead. Just keep going straight ahead. So you're being pushed up, but you're moving forward, and that's what you gotta just go with that, because like the old lady said, if you do like the old people did, you'll be okay. Well, that's it. All right, thanks.